only documented something different than what I told them, so.
Did you get a new room?
I rearranged my office.
It looks nice.
Because the way it was before, the way it was before, I felt like you were in the principal's office, you know?
Yeah, it feels like it has more space. It feels like it has more space.
Yes, it does to me, too.
Nice.
And I'm not talking to people across the desk, which I don't really like to do.
Oh, surely, yeah.
So, it drives me crazy that I can't look up and see my schedule. It's stuck on July something now. Keep thinking if I put in the date, maybe it'll. No schedule available. Okay, so I'll just. So, how are things going in your life?
I saw you on the 3rd of July.
It's been 2 weeks. I can't access it to tell for sure. I usually, I mean, I can get everything pulled up at once, or all my time slots, but I can't tell who, if anybody's in them. It says it's not a scheduled day for me. I guess I'm not here.
Your appointment was on the computer, but it told me that I shouldn't sign in for it, but it definitely showed you. So
Normally when that happens, when you sign in up there, it pops up saying waiting on my schedule so that I know you're here. I figured you were here, but I wanted to try to see if I could pull up my schedule before I brought you in.
Ah, that's fine.
And I sent them another note saying I can't document, I can't enter charges, I can't open charts. It is what it is. So
after I saw you, like a few days later, maybe a week later, I'm not really sure. I saw my grandmother, so that was kind of nice.
You saw your grandmother?
Yeah, she came by and brought me to breakfast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she was coming to the North Shore so that she could meet some friends.
Oh, okay. So she lives on this side?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she lives with her daughter.
On this side. But her daughter is not related to you, it's on the other side?
No, she is. She's related to me.
Okay.
It's just my aunt, but my aunt's like, you know, that her daughter is one taking care of her kind of a thing, you know, so it's like, my aunt was at work that day, I think, but, she came on her own, to meet her friends, for like brunch, and she saw me before that.
So does your grandma know what goes on with your parents?
She does. She was asking me questions about other stuff that happened with it. She's not very good with it herself. She's always kind of not been, she's been bad too, for sure, but she's been a bit more reasonable, but she definitely doesn't help much, but she did kind of a little bit last time.
Because she doesn't want to intervene, or because she's not really there, or? I
don't know. I don't understand her behavior. I never did. None of it really made sense. Maybe she's just old.
Yeah.
But like I say that.
Senile, or?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, she's like 85, maybe. I'm not sure.
Right. But she did bring you breakfast, so that must.
Yeah, she did bring me to breakfast, which was nice. She did ask me a bit about what had been going on and like what I knew or didn't know, kind of a thing. And like, I didn't really apparently know a lot of stuff that has been going on, like, maybe I was aware of, or maybe not. I'm not really sure if my dad had mentioned it, but my uncle died, and I'm not really sure.
Would that be your?
My great uncle, so it was his uncle, so like,
her brother?
Her brother, yeah, her younger brother, her only other sibling that was alive besides her oldest sister.
I wonder if your parents went to the services.
My father did. He didn't bring me though, so I mean that was kind of a bit upsetting. But it all did kind of happen really fast, and they did put him in a nursing home really fast, and then he died like days later. So it kind of maybe just came too quickly, and you know, I don't actually know the circumstances of how happy the rest of my extended family, who I don't ever see or speak to and stuff, they've never done anything to help or anything like that, or had any relationship with me, but I don't really expect them to, honestly. Not like,
I mean, you're almost like a prisoner of that.
Yeah, that's true. It is. And maybe they don't like that either, and maybe they didn't want me at the funeral because maybe they really didn't want my father there. I could have seen that too, because my great uncle had a lot of friends and was pretty well liked within the town he lived in, and he was like a member of, like, he was their clerk of court something or other for like decades. He was like one of their people in the office, but like one of the public like positions that's like elected or something. So like they may just not have wanted to have problems or something. If like, you know, me and my father may have made upset my father or something. I could have seen that occurring, kind of a thing. Like thinking about it like in hindsight, you know?
I mean, but don't you kind of get along okay with your father?
Yeah, I do, but if something's going on with my mother, like things have been going on with my mother, like her assaulting me in June, and you know, it's not like she's been doing much else. So I mean, she brought over 2 things of chicken, I guess, for like 5 minutes, and didn't speak to me or stuff. I was asleep, but I saw that she brought it over, and so like 2 frozen things of chicken. So I'm eating one of those right now, which is nice. I appreciate that, but she's supposed to actually like feeding me and, you know, bringing toilet paper and other stuff, and she hasn't done any of that. And she could have carried in more groceries, but she only brought in just 2 little boxes like this.
And she brought you food you could feed yourself.
Yeah, but she doesn't want to do even that. She just doesn't care. She just wants to take more money, and that's what she said. So I mean, it's like she's been very clear about that. She just wants more money.
How much money does she think she should get for that place?
Now, she just makes up random numbers. It'll go higher and lower depending on how good she is. She's done the same thing at home. Like, it's our other address, you know, with the other property. She would think that she should get $1,000 for 1 room, and then even her, like, boss and friend would, like, tell her no, and to, like, shut up and stuff like that. And then, because she was, like, annoying everybody by being too drunk or something, and then she would say something stupid like that in front of someone who was law enforcement, and then they would also tell her to basically shut up. And they would have stood there and not have said anything for the whole time until she started doing something like that, because all of a sudden she's now extorting me, and that's now another felony, and, you know, she doesn't seem to give a shit, and I don't think she's ever going to. So it just kind of, I don't think she has like a realistic, it's not like there's a realistic reason for what she should get or not get, because she's not supposed to be charging me.
Sober mood, could you ask her for a...
No, there wouldn't be a chance, because she's been asked in that kind of a context in front of a lawyer and stuff like that.
Put anything in writing?
Yep, and she, when the terms looked bad for her, like bad in her favor, because she was in a semi-sober mood and there were witnesses and stuff, all she did was backtrack until, like, she didn't want to charge me anything, because all of a sudden that's the most appealing thing for her to do, to, you know, not get criminally charged. That's what's happened in the past. But that was a long time ago.
Do you have any kind memories of your mom from when you were a kid, or?
I guess. I mean, I don't know. Not really sure.
When's the first time you remember her being mean to you?
I don't know. I mean, she didn't really interact with me much. I don't think she was mean or kind. She didn't really, she didn't start being like she is now until I was in high school, and until I was later on in high school. Before that, she would just kind of have breakdowns sometimes that seemed like they were more stress related due to like the circumstances, but they weren't necessarily targeted at me. Like, there were multiple times where she just stopped wanting to bring me to my initial infusions for my cancer, like when I was 10 or 11, just had turned 11. But that seemed to be more of like a understandable type of a thing. Like, even the doctors were saying that. and then they were making my father bring me instead and just kind of like work there because he could do that.
Was she angry because you had cancer?
No, she just looked like she was having a mental breakdown or something. I think that's what the doctors were deciding around, and she was just kind of handled to the side, and that's what happened. But then like she gets swings in mood and stuff, but that's apparently normal for women who their children are dying and they're on treatment. It's like a thing they expect to happen, especially with the women. So but they handle it for both parents, and they counseled me on that beforehand, before I even started treatment, before I even got into my surgery.
Excuse me.
And they didn't even tell my parents they did that, because their biggest concerns were my parents, because that's always what they are for most of the kids, is that once the parents are informed about things, a lot of the parents, they'll decide to do things like not give their kids any information about the fact that if they go on treatment, they'll live. Because some parents, they don't want their kids to live, and they don't want other people to know that. They will immediately hear their kids get diagnosed with cancer, then they'll go to their church on Sunday, legitimately. That's how they explained some of this to me in Texas, about how they handle these things, and then the whole congregation will learn about how their child is about to pass away with like stage 3, 2 cancer that might even be curable. And
most parents want their child to live.
But a lot of parents, they don't express that properly. Like, they immediately go through like a grieving period that kind of goes into like a deep descent right out of that. And they had like psychologists explaining this to me, to where even though I'm, much older now, I guess, comparatively, I don't know, I'm not that old, but relatively speaking, I've had a lot of years between now and then. I still remember how they explained it to me and like what context they used within the local area and state, even though the people speaking to me were from DC. It was clear they were doing it like for that, because I would understand between my contacts in around Louisiana and New Orleans and stuff, because I'm not from Texas, but they were using the context around there to show that they had like done things within that, like, and they were also teaching residents who were standing there and stuff. So because it was like an educative type of exposure, that kind of worked pretty well to like articulate it to me, at least back then. Because I had already been in school, so I kind of I understood what to like expect, like when they were starting to teach. That helped me a lot, at least with that. If my parents had been involved at that stage, that would have been not something that could have happened, because my mother would have like interrupted the whole process and just caused a very probably stressful environment for the students too, because they kind of were treating me like I would have been one of the residents, because I needed the information on the same level in order to basically guarantee that I would behave in a certain way and like tell other doctors in the future that of what had happened, basically, and why I knew the things I knew, and why my mother wouldn't have known them, type of a thing. Because some people, they just expect like their parents would be told the things they need to be told about their kids' treatment, but that's not really the case in certain age ranges. If I was like 14 to like 16 to maybe 18, I would have been a big difference in experience. But because I was right under the cusp for puberty, because I was 10, and I didn't start puberty at all because of my cancer at the time, and that's basically usually what happens, it meant that my parents still had actual decision control over whether I could even have surgery and live at all in almost every state, at least back then. I don't know if that's the case now, I kind of doubt it, but back then there were a lot less kids living. It was a long time ago, and there wasn't, even St. Jude's wasn't fully up and running.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, I think now that...
I think now it's pretty big difference.
Threatening, they can force it.
They can force it, yeah. But back then, they actually weren't able to in a lot of cases, and they made that pretty clear to me. And I was like, and I remembered that too, because my neighbor had been, for when I was really little, like preschool kind of, up until maybe like 6, 7, kind of off and on, he had terminal cancer. So he went through it, but as a like slightly older age group of like 13 maybe and above, kind of, like he was in the puberty range and up. But I grew up knowing someone next door who was in that same category that I am today, but just his situation was a lot worse, and I got to see how the school district treated him, how the different parents like reacted. Like, I remember people talking to me because I lived next to him, and they just wanted to know if it was really true that the local high school had basically kicked him out because he had cancer, and they didn't want someone like that who could be educated on treatment and stuff going to school with their kids, and they had to try to pass a law and stuff and change some legal situations within the schools for the whole state, for this whole state to change it. And they did.
HIV or AIDS, I've never heard of that, but cancer.
Apparently it was because of some sort of law that they passed like after 9/11 in the state that hadn't been used yet or something, was like, it kind of like they needed to roll it back, and so it just hadn't had any applicability, and it was something like that. So it basically like took a couple years. It was because he was diagnosed probably like 2002, 2003 or something like that. So it was all within that whole time period, and there was.
I mean, they never thought cancer was contagious, so.
You would think that they wouldn't mess up something that bad, but I mean, people back then just maybe they wrote it in a certain way, they phrased something wrong. I mean, you could probably look it up around that time period, and I bet there's some Times-Picayune story about it.
So were you ever actually kept out of school?
People tried to.
They tried to, but they weren't successful.
Nope, and that was mainly because of me. And my doctors had prepared me for that at MD Anderson, because they made it clear that that would happen. And I already knew about that because of my neighbors, so I already had expressed that to them, and I said, no, I know, I'm going back to school, and no one's going to be able to stop me. And they treat it like a defense issue. I mean, if you're going to be people showed up to school to try to take away my cell phone. They didn't want me having a cell phone because they didn't want me documenting if I was at school or not. They didn't want me to be able to call the police. That's what they told me. And they showed up, they went trespassed on the school, went up a flight of stairs to the classroom, tried to take it away from me, but they didn't get very close because I kind of approached them, and there was some slight altercations, but you can't necessarily say that I did anything, because the cops were just waiting to get any excuse to basically just grab them, and they did. So it wasn't an issue at all.
Yeah.
But and they knew that, they were basically walking themselves into a situation where they were surrounded. He wasn't like that. No. He wanted me at school and stuff like that. Yeah, and he still wanted me at school when I was in high school, and he wanted me in school when I was in college. So it was that way for everything. My mother wanted me at school, but she still had her issues where, she would do stuff like when I was in middle school. She sometimes had issues to where she still would probably just get drunk and stuff, and then, or maybe she didn't drink back then, I don't really know at this point, but she would have a breakdown, and then she'd start believing I didn't have cancer, all because she didn't want to bring me across the lake, which didn't really make much sense, because she only had social incentivization to actually bring me across the lake and bring me to my appointments. It was a normal part of everyday life. That had been, it was very easy on her.
How old were you when she started drinking?
I don't know. I'd say if we attribute everything to her drinking, then I'd have to say it would have to have been when I was in 5th grade, whenever she started to just say that I didn't have cancer all of a sudden. Because that got bad, because when I graduated from middle school in 7th grade, she'd even convinced the principal to stand up on stage and give a speech, lie to the principal, about my being cured of cancer. And the principal got up there, had me come up and talk all about how brave I had been and good and stuff. And she was proud of how I had persevered and stuff like that. And I'm sure that was genuine. But she had been totally convinced by my mother, because my mother had been telling everybody that I was cured. And when she gave me the microphone to speak, I basically destroyed her reputation, because I had to, because I can't have a whole room of people, or not a room of people, almost like an auditorium of people, believing that I am cured of cancer. And I had to explain how that was factually incorrect, and I explained why, and why terminal cancer doesn't go away, and why melanoma can't be cured. And everybody was all the parents were just sitting there, of all the kids graduating and multiple grade levels, and listening to that and squirming, and having to watch a child explain something that's that obvious, and they weren't very comfortable.
Pretty angry.
Honestly, I don't think she gave a shit. I don't know what happened to her, but I think they probably just are friends of hers and acquaintances, and some of whom who did work in the school were friends of my friends, and who were mothers of my own friends. just kind of moved around her and got her, you know, to the side, and she was probably drunk or something.
She was no longer on stage then?
Oh, she was never on stage. She wouldn't have been allowed to. She was just in the crowd kind of a thing. And I don't even know if she was sitting down. She may have just been they may have gotten her up.
Well, when they handed her the mic, she was on stage.
They handed me the mic.
But
the principal, they didn't, my mother would have been in the crowd. I was on stage, and the principal was on stage.
So your mother made her speech from the audience?
No.
She said you
my mother never spoke that day. I only spoke and the principal spoke.
Okay, I thought your mother said that day that you had been cured.
She had said that to the principal prior and convinced the principal of that. And the principal had been clearly lied to because, or she, you know, just didn't know anything about cancer, and that's what most people would be like. They aren't educated on it. And if the mother of the kid constantly lies to them over the course of multiple years, it's totally understandable that they would be that clueless.
So when you were a kid, there was never any intervention from the school?
There very well could have been, but it was always kept quiet from me, which I guess I would say I'm thankful for to an extent, but maybe it would have been better to have included me if they ever had a diagnosis for her or something.
Nobody ever interviewed you or talked to you?
It didn't seem like it. They may have with my sister because there were some issues with other girls, but not about my sister, but about other girls like around her and them, or maybe like
how they treated her?
No, how the girls were maybe treating other girls outside of school or something like that, and like maybe they interviewed my sister based on that. I think my sister may have just been asked questions a few times about like how some girls' behavior was in class, like just on a day-to-day basis, to see, you know, I gauge it from like a third-party kind of a standpoint, kind of a thing, from just a peer in school.
Nobody ever came and spoke to you from social services?
I think they did, but it was only ever about my cancer. It wasn't anything about really my family. They did come and tell me, like at the hospital a bunch of times, you know, because of my blood test results and things like that, almost being anemic one time because of a medication or something like that. Another time, having my iron count drop through the floor, and them like have to put me on a very, very high dosage, and consider intravenous infusions for like a day or two or something. Besides a few things like that they had to speak to me about because of nutrition stuff and figure out what was going on, it kind of became apparent that like it wouldn't have even have been the food, because it was just cancer related, and it wouldn't have been possible to have like supplemented my diet with enough X, Y, or Z parts of like, I think, anything besides a very, even vitamins and stuff, they weren't finding ability to prescribe at a correct dosage because of like child vitamins. Like they were like, okay, we'll get them on a child like regimen for a vitamin, and it was like, oh well, that's still not enough. Multiple times over, and they didn't want me on a bunch of other stuff, so they had to get.
How about a nourishing diet?
Yeah, that doesn't compensate for cancer though. Whenever like you might not be physically capable of eating 5 times the normal amount of food, but you still might need 5 times the nutrients, so they had to figure.
The type of cancer that you have, eating
sometimes
3 good meals a day is not going to help you gain weight.
Nope, it doesn't. I don't gain weight if that's I have been able to gain small amounts of muscle mass and keep it, but small. And I don't even, if I had 3 nourishing meals a day, that would be great. I definitely see improvements, but I wouldn't be able to just gain weight. I will never be able to get probably past, like I got to 116 pounds in high school, and
116?
Mm-hmm. And that was probably going to be the highest I'm ever at. Yeah. I think I may have weighed 118 one time, but that was with like shoes on and like a coat or something, maybe like a hoodie, some stuff like that. So we're like.
Did you feel better then?
Well, I can't. Probably. Maybe. There were other conflicting medications I was on, so my overall, and my seizures weren't controlled, So that's probably a no.
So how do you feel now on a day-to-day basis?
As good as I can if I'm on all of my medication.
I mean, do you feel tired? Do you ever have any energy? Do you ever feel like
those things aren't
going somewhere?
Those aren't really applicable to me because I have too much brain damage. So I mean, like, I'm always sleep deprived unless I'm on my medicine. And then I do stuff, but I don't go out and go places because I don't really have the opportunity to. And it's honestly just the things I like doing usually. I don't have to go anywhere. I've just kind of grown up that way, you know? I've just created, you know.
And you said something about brain damage?
Yeah, it's from the cancer treatment. And because of that, I don't have the energy other people would have because I don't produce the dopamine in my brain unless I'm on my medication.
But you get online and play internet games, right?
With other people, yeah. I speak to them. I plan around hanging out with them, and we do activities and stuff together. And I keep myself busy otherwise, and I'm usually too busy just dealing with my medical stuff that consumes all of my time. Like right now, my medication is now is causing issues because I can't get it again. And that's very stressful, and that's been causing problems, but I'm trying to work that out. And as time's gone on, I've gotten a lot less stressed having to deal with that. But not having my medication means I can't actually handle it because I'm too exhausted to, because I make too many mistakes when I'm kind of doing it, and I end up having too many seizures if I have no medicine at all. So things kind of just get worse and worse, and I could die. So I'm trying. It's tough kind of going through that balance again and again, but for months this year I had all of my medication and things were okay, and then I saw a big improvement in my life overall because of that. Also, my mother and my father weren't actually, I guess, causing me as much problems, so that was nice too. That was kind of like the earlier part of this year.
But so you can't get your medications yourself, like get them here at the Walgreens?
No, and I have a lot of issues with getting them on the North Shore too. It's just, in general, there's a lot of shortages usually, and sometimes there are issues with individual pharmacists, like right now. The Walgreens pharmacist who's filled my prescription on the North Shore for years, she's worked there for like 10 years, she's filled it in the same circumstances, so nothing's changed, for me and for her, and she was surprised in like June that she had filled my script so many times in the same circumstances, because in June all of a sudden she didn't want to fill it anymore, even though they had charged Medicaid and gotten the prior authorization and could have dispensed it to me and handed it to me in my name as the bottle was already like ready to go. They just said no because she didn't want to, because she started like enforcing new company policies. Yes, I mean, seriously, because she didn't want to. And then I went and I called a pharmacist in Abita, since I live in Mandeville. If you know where Abita is, far away. I called that pharmacist and I asked her about their company policies and stuff, and I explained the circumstances, and I said, in these circumstances, would you be able to...
What policy would say you couldn't prescribe your medicine?
If you go and fill the prescription at any other pharmacy within 50 miles, they're supposed to tell you no, is what she says. But that's against the law, and the actual cops have forced them to give me my medicine before, and so it kind of tells you that it's a bit absurd that she decided to start following it all of a sudden, but they've had kind of like an off-and-on policy for that to assist with like drug enforcement and stuff for overall in like the South. That's kind of been a thing for Walgreens for a long time, but they don't act completely stupid about it. And the pharmacist...
None of your medications are controlled substances.
They're all controlled substances, but it doesn't end up mattering.
There are controlled substances?
All of them.
Usually that's...
All of them are controlled
things
substances.
that people could use to get high.
Well, I can't get high off my medication.
But I mean, that's usually what a controlled substance is, stuff like...
yeah, well, they take controlled substances
like
and...
Adderall.
Yeah, it's Adderall. And they usually take Adderall and they mix that with other stuff to get high. But you can't just normally get high off of just Adderall. Even if you take my whole bottle, you can't.
Like you're speeding off of Adderall if you don't have ADD or ADHD.
Well, they can deal with that if they want. But if you have law enforcement, and you got my doctors, and you got a judge, and you got the state, police, you got everybody trying to tell these people that they're not allowed to do this, and they've done that before in front of me. It really kind of shows that that's a bit stupid, because the doctor and the pharmacist in Avita that works for Walgreens, she said she'd be fine to fill it, and when my father did bring me in that month to Avita, she filled it.
Why do you think the lady in Covington wouldn't?
The one in Mandeville next to my house? I don't know. I have no idea. She's kind of done... She honestly, the first conversation I had with her, where she was literally surprised that she herself had actually filled it and could see in their computer system that it was her who filled it, because she just didn't think she had done it. I was like, I don't understand what goes on with her. She doesn't really make much sense.
Doesn't make any sense.
It's any sense at all to me.
In the computer that she filled it.
Yeah, because she was the one on staff, so she was the one who, like, her license would have been registered and stuff like that. So it's like she could see that, and she was like actually surprised that it had been done for years. So it's kind of like it's weird.
And why was she saying all of a sudden she couldn't fill it? What was the rule that?
She just decided not to. She didn't say she couldn't. She avoided saying the words like "I can't." That was the whole thing. That's why I was like, I was really upset, because
She didn't give you any reason at all.
Her reason was that she would not, and it was her decision. It was like that she made it clear to articulate that, but not the fact that she couldn't, but that fact. Because in the past she has spoken about how she can't, and she explains why, and that would be if there's a shortage or something. If they don't have the medicine, then they put it on hold.
She just said, I'm not filling it?
Yeah, what is it? Even though, like, she's sharing records of herself filling it before. Yeah.
That's so weird.
It is weird.
You almost feel like there was a conspiracy or something going on.
I mean, look, I don't know, but the other pharmacist at the other Walgreens, she thought that it wouldn't be an issue, and then she did fill the prescription. So, and I was just one town over in Avita, in the same parish still. I believe Avita's still in St. Annie Parish. So, I mean, it's definitely not 50 miles away.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
It should be the same at any Walgreens over there.
It should, but I mean, they're the closest one to me, and I can't afford to go all the way to Avita. Like, this month, I don't have a way to, get my prescription. There's no other pharmacy that I can go to, and I've gone to other private ones in the area, but they don't take my insurance, because they don't really fill a lot of medications. It doesn't seem like they're really small time kind of a thing. Like, one of them is down. Yeah. One of them is a young girl who's like just 10 years older than me, and I ended up going there right after she opened, and she's young. Like, for like first month of working, I went in to try to fill my prescription, because I was also having issues at some of the other pharmacies, because they were just out of the medication. That was all it was. They were out. It wasn't that they wouldn't fill it. They didn't have it. Yeah, she had it, but she ended up not knowing how the billing system worked. It was very clear she had very little experience with it. She looked very stressed out while she was like handling the whole thing. She was trying to run the whole store herself, basically. I stood there and I was trying to like allow her to be take as long as she needed.
Be patient.
Yeah, I think that made her stress out more, and I felt bad for her, honestly, because I didn't want to make her feel stressed, and that bothered me, because there was clearly nothing I could do, and she ended up causing a flag to be put on her business with Medicaid, because she put it through the system incorrectly, the wrong way with the paper, and then pressed something the incorrect way. It was a bunch of things in a row, and I was just there for a while, and it sounds sensitive, but it really happened. I had to call Medicaid to actually report to them what had happened, because they were going to press charges.
Somebody would have come out and given her some training when she was setting up.
I told them I encouraged them to do that. If they can do that, to send someone to do that, because she actually does not know how to do it.
Yeah.
And it was clear her computer system was brand new, just set up, and she literally charged Medicaid 3 times but it was within like an hour, like maybe a little over an hour, so it like was still within a time limit.
Trying to enter it, didn't know she had it in.
But because of how I am with it as a patient, she's prior authorized, and it was back then, I think, at the first time it was with a judge, but it wasn't her second, much more strong ruling, to where it gave her the money instantly. So she was paid 3 times in one day for the prescription that I didn't end up getting, because it still canceled it out. And so that was like a huge deal to the federal government whenever that happened.
What medication was that?
That was the Adderall.
Adderall.
Yeah, it was the same exact issues, but like it was just. And so it's not like
Adderall, they watch real.
Yeah, and they watch it they watch it closely for that too, but it's also because of the price. They were just concerned when they spoke to me on the phone, Medicaid, that the price may have put her above like a federal limit for a sentencing. And so I was trying to convince them and give enough information to them that look, she just really didn't know what she was doing. And it once she just kept wanting to try it to fill the prescription because she could. She just didn't know she didn't know if she even like could accept my insurance at first, but that's how few insurances she had gone through yet. And a lot of people didn't know if they could take me as a patient at all in a lot of circumstances, just because of how if you're not a big hospital like this, most people aren't used to billing the feds and receiving, it always pays kind of a thing. That we're not normal type of patients unless we're in like the VA or something like that. So, but it doesn't mean we can't go other places. It just means we're regular.
Besides Adderall?
They're listed in my. Oh right, you can't pull up my chart. Yeah. It's just the Adderall, and it's the valproic acid capsule. With Dr. Alinejak at LSU right there. He's also runs the stroke clinic here, and he for my epilepsy. And the Adderall with the valproic acid capsule is what controls the seizures, because the Adderall raises my seizure threshold in my brain, and the valproic acid controls parts of the epilepsy that causes the seizures. So I have to be on both of them at the same time to actually stop the seizures.
So just those two? Those are the only medications that you're on?
For prescriptions? Oh, yeah, there's one other medication I take, like, as needed, depending on how...
the computer runs back on. Let me send this lady a note. I'm sorry, I don't usually do this.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Because of my computer problems, I'm trying to...
I don't want to keep the other patients waiting. Disoclamine capsules. It's prescribed commonly to treat nerve damage patients like me. In the stomach, it like unclumps the nerves, I was told, and it really works, and it helps a lot with intense like stomach cramping and stuff. That especially happens with maybe connotations with my epilepsy is what they thought, and it's a big deal. That has helped a lot, and that has no drug interactions with any of my other medications. So they started using that more recently with chemotherapy patients and stuff, and a lot of people are on it now. And it's the gastroenterology clinic here is where I go for that. And one of the chiefs of the department was involved in like the education and research of it, and he was, whenever I first started coming here, maybe like in between like children's hospital and stuff 2 years back, that's when they started like doing the research on it, and I was involved in that, I guess, as a patient, and they finally started to be able to really put me on it right around or before COVID, kind of, or like, and I kind of more regularly started taking it like during COVID, I guess, and then it's been working really well. But that's not that hard to get.
So have you ever thought about,
with that.
Usually stuff like the Adderall and...
I've had issues with the valproic acid though sometimes.
Yeah, the valproic acid sometimes too, and the Adderall.
And both of them. So the two most important medicines are the ones that I have the most issues with. Sometimes, like last fall, I went like 3 months without the valproic acid during winter. It was very, very dangerous. and I also went without the Adderall then maybe like 1.5 months or so, and then but then like at the start of this year, it was pretty much smooth sailing once I got through January, because Dr. Olenergic did something, and then I was able to get the valproic acid more consistently, but now valproic acid has run out also. I was able to find like a couple more dosages in one of my prescription bottles from like a year ago, so that kind of got me through most of the weekend, but I was having seizures on Saturday, and on like Friday, and because it had been a full week since I had that, and I was, I had full doses of my Adderall last week, but because I didn't have a full week of valproic acid, the seizures were still happening when I wasn't on the Adderall.
So you almost immediately start having seizures if you don't have your medication?
I'm not sure, because I won't notice as much, but I did notice because I was talking on the phone on Saturday, and I like view myself as like on the video thing when I'm like talking, because I was talking on my computer on Skype, and I have a cell phone plan, it's like a landline through that, and because it's cheap, and I just started doing that for years, mainly because of medical reasons, and I started seeing myself not be able to say my zip code properly in one instance, and I was noticing that because he had to ask me a couple times, and I was like looking at myself, and I was like, oh, I just had like a small seizure, and okay, it's been how many days? I started thinking, how many days has it been since the valproic acid ran out, and it had been 7 days, and then that was why I was probably then not on the Adderall right then and there, so I could definitely tell that I had spent most of that morning on the phone and stuff, and I had been on the Adderall, but the Adderall only lasts 2 hours, so that was like at the end, and that was what I was noticing, and I was like, okay, that was why, and that's a pretty, that's how I could say the seizures are usually appear. Otherwise, they're a grand mal seizure, and I'll just be on the floor.
Right, sure.
And I wake up, and I'll be on the floor.
So, have you ever thought about trying to go into, like, supportive housing?
No, that wouldn't work for me. That would probably put me in a more danger because of my immune system and stuff. I mean,
it's not like you have anybody who's looking after you now.
Yeah, but if someone was, I don't really need anybody to look after me in order to, I just need my medication. Since I'm lucky enough to where I don't have, like, there's most patients, I'd say, are in a much worse situation than me. I was very lucky to not have more damage to other parts of my brain, because I don't just constantly have, like, my epilepsy causing me to have seizures as much as some of these patients, some of the other children did. I met at least one child, and she had stage 5 cancer, same type as me, but 5. So she was when she was diagnosed, it was already in most of her organs, and not just very distant sentinel lymph nodes like me. It was everywhere, and so her treatment didn't stop whenever her symptoms stopped, because she would have died. When my symptoms got bad enough to where I was having chronic seizures, and like my mouth was going up and down, and I could stop breathing and stuff, that's when they pulled me off the initial infusions for her stuff. They kept going for 2 years even with that, because it was the only way. But she still lived like 5 years. But I met her when she was like year 3, year 4 or something, and at an event for the Final Four basketball thing, in New Orleans, through Children's Hospital, we like accepted money for like the hospital, did a check and stuff like that. It was when I was in high school, and so she was at least one other patient I met who I could see the symptoms that I had, but hers were like perpetual, and that's an instance where you have to admit in supportive housing, and I think that's what they were talking to my mother about.
Why would supportive housing not work for you?
I just don't need it, basically. And
I mean, you wouldn't have to deal with your mother or not having food.
I'd have to deal with a lot of other issues. Control of people to access it and stuff like that. I need to make sure that people were like reasonably like vaccinated, like the COVID, like during the COVID thing, it really showed. The best circumstance for me is I have to be able to just live alone, probably, or like with my parents who at least just get vaccinated and stuff.
can't get out permanent supportive housing, you live alone. You may have a caretaker that comes and checks on you every day, makes sure you eat and dress and.
Yeah, but I wouldn't really need that here.
Yeah.
So I don't need anybody coming in to check on me.
I wasn't thinking so much of you, how much you needed it, just that it can't be a very happy life.
I mean, I
think. In a condo, dealing with your mother and your
I haven't dealt with her in like 2 months, and it seems like she kind of backed off because I reported her and stuff like that. Maybe I worked. I probably wasn't the only one. But I think the condo so far is a good place. I enjoy kind of being able to cook for myself more. And I've been, if I had had more assistance kind of for food and things, and some
cook for yourself.
As much as I can. When you suggested me to get vegetables and stuff, I did.
Yeah.
And I looked into a few other things with that. So I've been trying to, I've kind of papered down a budget with that to where I think I've been able to stretch my food stuff better.
Do you get food stamps?
Yes, but we weren't able to increase it much. But I think it's been helping a lot from just that.
I'll have to look. I know here they have several community gardens where you get 2 for the price of 1 with your food stamps.
Oh, that would be something good.
I'll look into that myself because I'm not familiar with it on the North Shore.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I've been going to Walmart.
Yeah.
Through their, because I did get Walmart's membership for half price.
They'll do your shopping for you.
Yeah, and then they ship it to me for free. So that was the only fee. And I was able to get a few very important items from them for really cheap, probably because of SNAP. I was able to get 60 eggs for $10.
Yeah, that's cheap.
And then if that hadn't have been a thing that I could get from them because of SNAP, I wouldn't be going to them probably. But because of the eggs, that was a lot of protein. So I was able to. I was like, okay, I'll stick with them for now.
Yeah.
But if there was a 2 for the price of 1 kind of thing with community gardens, that would help a lot with vegetables.
I look into that. It's vegetables and fruit.
Because I like to have fruit, but fruit's too expensive at Walmart. It's still $2 or $3 per thing, and that's too much money.
I would think they would have it over there too. I guess I could say Tammany. Got a few things that they help you with food options. Okay, that one is a community garden, but they're trying to solicit volunteers.
Oh, I know what that is. That's the hospital. That's a education project. They did that. I was a part of that in high school too. A lot of the high schools participate in federal programs for biology, and they get credit hours and stuff potentially. That's probably what that is. I did their hospital program. I wasn't allowed to actually do anything though because I was restricted from going most places in the hospital because of my cancer, because they had an ICU. So I actually just stayed in the lobby most of the time and fell asleep. And then they kind of just asked me to go home because I was clearly more physically unfit to be there than the patient.
You don't really have transportation either, though, do you?
Yeah, no, I don't have any transportation. Today, since I went to an appointment with you, I'm going to be taking to Walgreens after the appointment, but that's only because I saw it in you today. If I didn't see you, I can't get to Walgreens unless I pay, and I don't have the money to keep going back and forth to different pharmacies, even if there's a problem. I don't even know if I could pay to go to the food bank, because if the pharmacy isn't literally that close and I only go one time, it's too much money and I can't pay for it. Yeah, I don't have a license, I can't drive for the rest of my life. It's because of my brain damage. I'm just not allowed to.
Right. Would it not be worth your while to, if it was close by, to take a Uber or something like that?
It would have to be really close, because otherwise it's going to be $30 to $50 round trip, and that's just too much.
That defeats the purpose.
Yeah, it just defeats the purpose. If they could ship it or something, I would gladly pay for shipping. But they'd have to be able to. just work something out with
The
them.
ones here, they'll let somebody pick them up for you, but you don't really have anybody to pick them up for you.
No, I know.
I'll have to look a little more. This one says something about it, but. Okay, I'll have to look into a little bit more if I can find something over there, because that would be nice. That'd be helpful to.
Yeah, just let me know next appointment. I'll try to, I guess, look myself, but I haven't usually been very successful. I don't really know what to honestly look for. Most of the things I've looked at or called have just been the first result on Google, and usually it's not been the correct thing.
I mean, here they have RTA offers door-to-door transportation. People who have certain disorders, you have to complete a form. I have to look and see if they have it on the North Shore that your doctor has to sign to verify that you can drive yourself anywhere, and they pick you up and take you wherever you need to go, whether it's shopping or doctors. There's a fee for it, but it's not as expensive as the Uber. I think it's like $3 each way.
Yeah, that would be a lot cheaper.
Yeah. If they have it on.
If they have, I don't know. RTA is a pretty big system. They might not. There's no buses from RTA that I know of, but there could be some sort of like grant money or something, so maybe they have like a thing.
Some sort of public transportation.
I know they have a elderly system that they have exclusively for like extremely elderly. That most elderly can't even use. Like my grandmother couldn't use it with my grandfather when he was about to pass away. Like no one can basically use it. You have to basically live in an elderly home and not have a wheelchair, and then you can use it. And it's pretty much just for them. And it brings them to like the grocery store and then back to the elderly home and things like that. So sometimes it only goes to like one grocery store or something because they kind of keep them in the same area so they can't just wander into traffic, because they do that sometimes. I've seen them kind of wander outside, and you have to flag down a police officer. They have a lot more patrols in that area, kind of a thing, but they don't actually have sidewalks and stuff, so that kind of keeps them usually from walking into the street. But since I live, across the street from there, behind fence lines and trees and things, and with there's a federal highway there, so, but you can still cross it at that point, even illegally. They still sometimes would walk across the street to the church, and all the cars would just kind of stop. And they'd stand around or something. So maybe they had dementia or stuff like that. Sometimes they even wandered into my neighborhood and got in front of my house. I've had sometimes them come and enter my home before.
Wow.
And come home, and that's where we found them. And my father was dealing with it, and I walked through the door. One time, a couple times it happened in high school. One time it happened after that. It would. We have a lot of elderly communities around, and just sometimes that kind of a thing, you'd be surprised. They can go miles and miles, even on foot, and no one will find out, and they'll not get really exhausted because of what kind of state they're in, but they'll just kind of go, and then they'll just find somewhere to sit, and they'll sit down, and then they'll someone will be there to speak to them, and they'll ask their name and stuff like that, and they'll be fine to answer, but it's they still need to go to EMT and stuff to make sure that they get fluids and things. I guess in every instance that I've seen, it was never during the summer. Maybe that would exhaust them too fast and they wouldn't get very far. But it would be in the nicest times of the year, to where maybe that was the time of the year they'd probably be let outside or with supervision.
Right, not this time of year.
Not this time of year, but maybe kind of the spring, before around May, or maybe usually it was around May. I think April, May, and then someone would just kind of get around and you either see it yourself or you hear about the kids who pass by, and they flag me down and tell me about it to make sure to look out for it, because it happened on my street the most. So it's just that transportation system. So just in case you see that, that's just for the elderly.
Yeah, you would think that the how St. Tammany has grown. It's not really a little country community anymore, that they would develop some kind of public transportation.
They really need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a lot of issues with school busing and stuff right now because of that. A lot of pretty bad issues with just getting any kids to schools. Even though they have all the schools in good conditions that they built up after Katrina, there's a lot of problems. Didn't used to be that way. Even when I was in high school, it was not that way.
Yeah.
Now it is.
So do you think of yourself as happy?
I'd say as much as I can be, yeah. I try to stay positive about, my circumstances, especially with my medication, but I have things to, look forward to do. I just really need to have my medication consistently to not have, not to be in danger.
Yeah.
It's really stressful. It's pretty stressful this past week, but it doesn't, but I think I've resolved part of it, and I'll have at least one of my medications today, so, I try to look up.
Battle on your medication has to be kind of a strain.
It really is, but it feels a lot better every time that I do end up getting it, and that I kind of have a weight, lifted for a little while, with at least part of it today. Even though for half the week it's pretty stressful.
But most of your social interactions
are
by computer.
Yeah, and that gets affected heavily because other stuff comes up and I can't even handle the other stuff without the consistency. If I had a good amount of consistency, it really does change the social interactions a lot. It allows for a lot more of that normal relationship and interaction that will be around consistently, because I won't be backed up with stuff.
Do you have a yard?
I don't. So that's good. I don't have to deal with that.
Yeah.
I do have a plant in the back porch that I planted from seeds I bought on Amazon that is growing on its own.
Yeah. So do you enjoy doing a little gardening?
I would like to expand that, but I don't have the money. But I would like to, maybe even though it's a long time that it takes, I would like to have multiple pots with plants in it.
Yeah.
But I need to buy a pot and stuff, and looking at the prices, it's going to be $100 per pot to do it correctly. I was thankful that previous owners had just left a really nice pot.
Nowadays at Walmart you could get those plastic pots that look like they're ceramic.
I think they wouldn't allow it just because of how the building is angled during a hurricane. The plastic thing is going to fly into an area where kids could be, so they restrict certain types of things. If I was living on the other side, if I wasn't facing the east, but if I was facing the west, like the other building, it was different.
Oh no, my granddaughter lives over in Covington.
It may just be us because we're really close to the water, and the storms can be kind of intense sometimes.
I had some depression screens. I was going to have you do another one before you left because it's been a while, but here we go. I don't know if I can even print anymore right now. Very frustrating. I'm going to try to call them again before my next person gets here. I can't even set your next appointment. I'll have to call you to.
Okay, I'll wait for your call then.
Okay. Do you want to try to match it to?
That would be good. I saw the appointment this time online, I think, and that worked out.
Yeah.
So I'll just make sure to keep watching for it since I'm aware you're having computer issues. So I don't think it didn't notify me either online.
I need to find out where my clipboard is.
Of the appointment.
Down here must still be in a bag in my trunk or in my house. It's obviously not really as big as you noticed.
hear you.
Okay, there's one underneath.
Oh, okay.
So you're not depressed at all.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
Which is kind of surprising.
Well, I don't know, just from how the questions are phrased and stuff, it only was really a short amount of time. Otherwise, it was only really over the weekend and maybe Monday and Tuesday, maybe for a bit of Tuesday. But I was getting on the phone and I was calling. If on Monday I hadn't have gotten any of my medication at all, I would call the police just because I can't have them just saying no to me. I can't have more than another pharmacy just saying no. It's not going to happen. And they haven't figured out, maybe they'll just resolve it with my doctor's office, because I spoke to my doctor's office.
I don't know about
and
the Altoid test, it's probably the same, but I know the Adderall, you can't pick it up one day before it.
Yeah, that's true. But once I learned how to deal with that, and I just kind of got on a routine, I don't have any concerns about that. Originally, like when I first was prescribed the medication, 10 plus years ago, that was kind of stressful because that wasn't very clear. But and the doctors didn't really understand either. They were like, well, we gave you the medication and the script, why didn't it go through? And they'd be like, well, they just wouldn't give it to us. And then they had to find out, oh, yeah, there's date limits. You didn't know about that? Because they had already expected I had been on the medication for a long time, because most of their other patients had. But I was basically the first time I had been on it.
Right,
and
you didn't really know what the rules were.
Exactly. Well, once I learned, it wasn't as big of a deal. It's only whenever you get to other circumstances. But my doctor's office, they were very supportive the other 2 days. So I'm sure that it made me, that makes me feel a lot better. So I'm sure something will be able to be worked out with the pharmacist, because they can't just say no.
It's not, is it prescribed by a doctor here?
No, but even if it was, it would be the same result, so like, I'm not able to pick up prescriptions here. They transfer them to the North Shore, because...
but sometimes if your doctor calls where you pick up the prescription...
They do, but it doesn't change it, because here, the doctors call it in, and then it gets sent over to the North Shore, so then they call the North Shore. But it's still, unless they're able to work something out, it usually doesn't matter even if they speak to them. But sometimes then they just change their mind later. Yeah.
Took up exactly the amount of time you're supposed to. So I will hopefully spend that long time today. I'll call you.
Okay. Alright. Bodin, Bodin. Jeffrey, George, EFFREY.
You have a nice day.
You too, now.